Oh shit. Everything went crazy for a minute.
That they want to, they can't let us know about it because it's a weakness of theirs. There's a weakness there.
That was close.
We don't know what the weakness is. We don't know if we could ever stop it. That's for sure. But we don't have enough super intelligent people to get together by the hundreds, if not the thousands around the world and try to figure out what can we do about this phenomenon. And as long as they're secret, and as long as nobody knows, then they're pretty free. But the point is that there has to be some sort of weakness there because they are secrets.
Try again.
Oh, maybe it was Twitter, not Twitter, YouTube that hit me. Somebody took my shit off. I don't see too much UFO stuff.
In this video, I'm going to discuss orbs, consciousness control, and UFOs. Orbs seem to be rampant within the literature of anomalous phenomena. In fact, I have seen orbs myself, and I'm going to go deep into that story later in this video. But first, I want to go over an absolutely amazing story found in the book Hunt for the Skinwalker by Dr. Colm Kelleher and investigative journalist George Knapp. Before we do that, let me give a little background on the Skinwalker Ranch. The Skinwalker Ranch is located in northeastern Utah, an area called the Uinta Basin, which has a long history of being known as a paranormal hotbed. In fact, the Ute Indian tribe has an oral tradition going back 15 generations that portrays this area as a place of frequent unexplained phenomena. Skinwalker Ranch is currently owned by real estate mogul and tech investor Brandon Fugal, who has a team of scientists right now at the Skinwalker Ranch property studying the alleged phenomena that frequents this property, utilizing a whole variety of advanced tools. Now to the amazing orb story that allegedly occurred back in the 90s on the premise of Skinwalker Ranch when the Gorman family owned the property. Tom Gorman, the owner of Skinwalker Ranch at the time, saw a blue orb flying through the tree line, and as it was flying through the trees, it was easily visible because the object cast a very bright blue glow. His wife also started to notice it, and she was alarmed by it. Then it went from the tree.
You guys watch that new Skinwalker Ranch show? I watched the first one. It was pretty good. Hey, Das. The Skinwalker Ranch. You know the lead astrophysicist guy, Travis Taylor, or whatever? I look exactly like that guy. That guy could be my twin.
And started traveling to where his horses were, and then it got close to one of his horses. And because of how bright the object was, it cast a very eerie, illuminating blue glow upon the horse itself. The horse was shaking its head as if to free itself from a swarm of flies. Tom noticed that this was a little weird because usually when he saw these blue orbs and they would come close to any of his animals, the animals would freak But in this instant, the horse did not freak and responded as if it was a swarm of flies. Suddenly, the blue orb darted away from the horses at astonishing speed and abruptly stopped 15 feet above the ground and about 15 to 20 feet away from the Gormans. The book Hunt for the Skinwalker continues to convey. The exterior of the orb was a clear, hard shell not unlike glass. It was maybe 2 or 3 times the size of a baseball, and inside the glass-like exterior moved a swirling, intensely blue substance. It seemed to Tom like a liquid beginning to boil, a nearly bubbling, incandescent blue fluid. He could hear a faint crackling sound from the object, like static electricity sometimes makes. As Tom watched this amazing spectacle, the hair on the back of his neck rose. He could feel a wave of deep, naked fear washing over him. He felt paralyzed with the deepest, most...
I hope I'm not considered a hack, taking other people's shit off YouTube and playing it. It's like closed for a month. It's crazy. I'm gonna have to steal people's stuff off of YouTube. What else am I gonna do?
Visceral fear he had ever known. It was overwhelming. Wild animals have trapped Tom. He had been close to death, but he had never felt anything like the intensity of the terror he felt now. He knew Ellen was feeling the same because she had begun to hyperventilate. She gasped deeply and her body had begun to shake. Tom felt like he was going to have a seizure. Ellen Gorman, Tom's wife, turned on a flashlight, and this elicited a response in the blue orb, and it shot off into the distance. After this happened, Tom Gorman recognized that the overwhelming, paralyzing fear that this blue orb caused him to have vanished immediately. It was like turning off a light switch. Tom Gorman reflects on the impact this blue orb had on him and his wife. How could that orb have provoked such abject terror in both of them? Tom knew that the fear he had felt was artificial. It had not been a normal response for him. He guessed that this bright blue orb had deliberately manipulated his emotions. How could this be? He wondered. I'm rather open to the potentiality that Tom Gorman and his wife Ellen Gorman had the experience that I just laid out. And the reason for that is because I myself have seen orbs. And I'm going to share that story with you. Many years ago, I was in a situation that was causing me psychological distress.
I heard this story before. He's full of shit. Now he's embellishing the shit out of an old story that was boring from the beginning. You know, these guys like Deep Prasad and UFO Jesus. No. Oh, I've had my encounters. You're a mouthpiece. Moth for the light. You haven't seen shit. Dude, I've seen UFOs that'll make you shit your brains out. Scare the crap out of you.
With it, I decided to go to the roof of my apartment. So I go up to the roof of my apartment and I start doing martial arts. After my martial arts session is over, I then decide to sit and meditate. So I meditated for 10 minutes, and in this meditation session, I envisioned that I was in a beautiful, radiant forest. Now, granted, I don't usually meditate. As soon as the meditation was over, I opened up my eyes, and out of my peripheral vision, I see very bright, blinking orbs, many of them like flying around. I don't necessarily recollect which side I saw them first, so let's just say the right side. So I see it out of my peripheral vision, and like anybody would do, I'm like, what the hell is that? And I look, gone. And then when I brought my face back center, right there and then, I noticed these orbs flying around out of the left side of my peripheral vision. I look, gone. This is very significant to me. And interestingly, I would say that this, to me, is more intriguing than if I would have seen the orbs straight away. Because it forces me to consider the intelligence behind these orbs. For starters, it appears that these orbs did not want to showcase themselves in a way which would be more straightforward, where I see them in front of me. I have no idea why they chose.
Oh, here we go. What's going on now?
to only showcase themselves from the
all good,
peripheral.
man.
Furthermore, as soon as I went to look at them, they blinked off. They were gone.
You guys gotta slap.
And
Hey, slap a like on this big boy for me, like UFO Jesus says.
well, there's two possibilities here. Either they had amazing reflexes, so right when I started moving my head, they blinked off, or they were precognitive. Have no idea what applies to them. These orbs appeared as fireflies, though I think it's very unlikely that there were fireflies suddenly on the top of an apartment building in the midst of Los Angeles, but I guess you never know. I do believe that what I saw was something unexplained, but then again,
I have to go use the facilities. I'll be right back.
and I'm certainly open to it being.
You guys behave, please. Behave in the chat room. Don't be jerks. Okay, don't be jerks to each other. Try to be cool. Don't be jerks.
Something of a conventional nature. Twitter user @BlueBookBelieve had the following to say to me regarding my experience. Have you ruled out natural physical effects, i.e. your eyes reacting to light after they are closed for so long? I'd start with the simplest answer first. Try and rule that out, because the further and more esoteric you go, the more you're in interpretive mode, which is hit and miss. I respond. I haven't ruled that out in the least, but the unambiguous nature of the experience and the fact it only happened once and the fact other meditators have experienced it gives me pause. When it happened, I emailed a meditation teacher and asked him if he knew anything about this phenomena, and here's what he had to say. Nobody seems to know exactly what they are, but I tend to think they're either a spiritual guide or another higher dimensional being simply blinking hello, or a tiny opening in the fabric that appears to separate our world from the spiritual dimensions. There are two noteworthy differences between my experience seeing orbs and Tom and Ellen Gorman's experience. And to be clear, I don't know for certainty whether it was one orb moving erratically or multiple orbs, because it was my peripheral vision, but it was very, very bright. That I do remember distinctly. And you could certainly make the argument that the fact that I saw them out of my peripheral as opposed to seeing them in front of my face makes the evidentiary value of my experience less, and that's very fair and valid. But besides seeing them from the peripheral, another big distinction between my experience and the Gormans is that when they saw that blue orb, in that time frame, their emotions were manipulated. They recount that they had extraordinary fear while seeing that orb, suggestive that the blue orb itself was manipulating their emotions. My emotions were not altered whatsoever. However, I have had an experience where the phenomenon completely altered my physiology, completely altered my mood. And I've told this story many times, and I'm not going to completely rehash it now. Suffice to say, when I was 14 years old in Vermont, I received a telepathic message while in a car looking out the window. And simultaneously receiving that telepathic message, I felt pure bliss that turned on like a light switch with no warning. And so I look at Tom Gorman's and Ellen Gorman's experience, and I look at my experiences, and the commonality of them, from my perspective, only serves to underscore that that I think there is non-human intelligence that frequents our planet and has the capability of not only manipulating human emotion, but presenting itself to whoever it wants to present itself to. In the vein of consciousness control, I have an amazing story to share with you from the book Confession by Dr. Bob Jacobs and Robert Hastings. Jet engine mechanic Christopher Smith relays that at the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis, 2 nuclear-armed B-52 planes took off, and at some point in their flight, they had a mid-air emergency, so they had to return back to Loring Air Force Base in Maine. Shortly after they landed, an enormous mile-long cigar-shaped vehicle emerges at low altitude, right over the taxiway, and hundreds of Air Force personnel that were there gaped at this vehicle in wonder. Robert Hastings continues regarding this amazing UAP incident. Unbelievably, after the UFO left, these men mysteriously behaved like oblivious automatons, calmly returning to their duties without even mentioning the amazing incident to one another. Smith wrote, "No one spoke of the UFO then or later. Our branch chief and all of the shop chiefs were sitting there having coffee, even though they had all been out on the aircraft parking ramp and saw the same thing we had. Not a word then or later was said about this extraordinary event, which was both highly unusual and bizarre. But at the time, it didn't even occur to me that it was. It was like a dream or as if it never happened, but it did." Robert Hastings relays that it was as if a powerful mental suggestion had been planted in the minds of all of the witnesses of what they saw.
Yeah, I saw Dave on Dark Horde. Dark Horde was a good show. That was a good one. I don't think there'll be shit on today because it's Sunday.
Not to worry about it and not to
stuck with
wonder
UFO,
about it.
Jesus.
The book Confession goes on to explain. The most noteworthy aspect of the Smith episode in 2006 was, of course, the very dramatic information he was divulging to me. If the incident had occurred as described, a mile-long, cigar-shaped UFO had deliberately interfered with a vital U.S. military operation during the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Smith believes that the two B-52s had encountered the huge craft over the ocean, and it had somehow caused mechanical glitches in both of the aircraft, or perhaps...
I haven't listened to SOR in a while. I was kind of upset with SOR. You know, the one time they called me a troll, and they were all laughing at me, calling me stupid.
Remotely tampered with the nuclear bombs on board, just as the UFOs in other cases had disrupted the functioning of several ICBMs. Either issue could certainly have resulted in the mid-air emergency reported by the pilots. Let's briefly go over what we covered in this video. We covered the experience the Gormans had at Skinwalker Ranch, in which they witnessed an intensely blue orb that manipulated their consciousness and made them feel intense fear. We went over my experience on the top of an apartment building in Los Angeles, in which I saw orbs out of my peripheral vision. We went over a telepathic experience I had when I was 14 years old, in which I received a telepathic message, and coinciding with that, some unseen force manipulated my consciousness and made me feel intense joy. And we went over the incident with the two B-52s. They landed. Shortly after that, a mile-long cigar-shaped vehicle emerges at low altitude, and hundreds of Air Force personnel gape at it in wonder, and subsequently they don't really talk about it, suggesting that their consciousness was manipulated. The intelligence behind that cigar-shaped vehicle wanted to plant some sort of powerful suggestion in the minds of these Air Force personnel, just to be like, whatever.
Yeah.
Clearly, we are dealing with intelligences that have the potential capability of manipulating our consciousness.
Possibly. But not probably.
I think a takeaway is that we are dealing with most likely multiple intelligences. Where could these intelligences originate? Well, some of them could originate from another star system. Some of them could originate from other dimensions. Some of them could originate from some sort of spiritual realm. There's no end to the possibilities of where these intelligences may originate. Another very important takeaway that I want you to have is that if this is all real, and I'm not some kind of loon, and other people who have relayed their experiences are not loons, and let's say they're accurate in their renditions, at least some of these people, I would submit to you that on this biosphere, it is probably a fact that every single moment that passes, many people all around the world are having intersections with non-human intelligence. Literally, that is how pervasive non-human intelligence is on our biosphere. And that is what the shift is about. That is what disclosure is all about. It is the acknowledgement that we are not alone and that there are non-human intelligences on our planet, probably from...
Wow, UFO Jesus is really wigging out in this video. He's really flailing around.
Multiple different origins. That is, in my opinion, real. And in my opinion, that is an assessment that we as a civilization are going to progressively accept more and more, because that is where we're headed. It may start with vehicles that the Navy encounters and so forth, but that's not where it ends. I think we're going to come to the realization, as science gets on board with this, more efforts are undertaken at places like Skinwalker Ranch to investigate anomalous phenomena, that the reality is not only are we not alone, but there's a lot of life out there and everywhere. And sometimes humans intersect with that life. I'm going to leave you with a quote from Dr.
Wow.
Travis Taylor, who actually spent...
How deep. Such a deep dude. How many followers this guy got? 14,000 followers, man. It's crazy.
some time out at Skinwalker Ranch studying the purported anomalous phenomena that frequents that location. This quote is about the word paranormal, and it's from the podcast UFO YouTube channel. Paranormal means something that's not normal to this universe. Well, if we see things happening within the universe, then it must be normal to it. It just may be something that we don't understand. And we create this box of what we believe normal is, which is actually a small, narrow-minded, actually egocentric thing to do, that we think just because we created the box that we said is normal, that all the normal stuff has to fit.
Okay, I'm done. I'm done with UFO. I mean, I really enjoy UFO conjecture. It's great. But don't act like you're an authority on anything because you don't know jack shit about crap. I'm going to play Area 503's latest video because he's cool. He goes on Rich's show. I hope Area 503 doesn't mind. I'm sorry, Area 503. I'm not trying to be offensive. I won't talk any smack during your video. I just want to listen to it. I like Area 503. He's a really nice guy. Area 503, I'm sorry if I'm playing your stuff. Area 503, okay? I'll hit like. I hit like on it. I'm subscribed. Area 503.
Hello out there, everybody.
Alien head.
Manny here at Area 503.
Manny.
And I hope
Oh, shit. Hang on. Oh. Look, Chuck Bam came on and it got knocked off again. Why does it do that? Every time Chuck Bam gets on there, something electronically gets knocked off. Oh, goodness gracious.
and 139 minor planets at the edge of our solar system. Pluto, which was once considered a planet, has been redesignated as a trans-Neptunian object, or TNO. A TNO is an object whose orbit is greater than that of Neptune's. It turns out that scientists had already detected over 100 of these TNOs in the past. However, in this new study, the research team used data from the Dark Energy Survey to identify 139 new TNOs. And I guess this is quite a remarkable achievement because apparently these TNOs are extremely difficult to detect as they...
What's a TNO? Does anybody know what a TNO is? I might have missed it because the phone got glitchy.
Do not emit any light of their own, like stars, and so the team used a painstaking process of what amounted to motion tracking to detect these objects. As a guy who has motion tracked hundreds of UFOs, I can tell you it's extremely tedious, and it requires amazing patience, so good job, guys. Well done. So now I guess the question is this. If there's over 200 of these TNOs out there, and some of them are minor planets full of resources, what do you think we're going to find when we start exploring these things? It seems unlikely to me that we're going to find any form of...
I don't want to talk smack during his video because I think 503 is cool. I'm just going to let it play.
Life as we know it, because these TNOs are outside of the habitable zone and can't support life as we know it. But that doesn't mean there's nothing there for us. Perhaps these TNOs are loaded with... maybe one day. For the time being, I guess it's good enough that we have identified that these TNOs are out there, and they're not that far away. I used to think that our solar system was pretty much empty, but nothing could be further from the truth. There are countless TNOs, comets, and asteroids flying around our solar system, and I, for one, can't wait to see what discoveries each one holds. I guess only time will tell. So let's move along to our next piece, which is this announcement that astronomers have discovered an exoplanet where reigns liquid iron. Holy crap. Let's check that out. WASP-76b is 640 light years away from the Earth, and it's a gas giant like Jupiter and Saturn. This planet is tidally locked, which means that one side of the planet always faces the sun and one side always faces away from the sun as it rotates around the star. This creates two distinct regions on the planet where one side is forever hot and the other side is forever cool.
You say that just once you'd like your hamburger hot and your lettuce and tomato cool and crisp all at the same time? Yeah!
On the hot side, the temperature is so extreme that it vaporizes iron, which rises in the atmosphere, and then a wind pushes this vaporized iron across regions into the cold side, where it cools down and solidifies, then rains down like bullets from the sky. Pretty cool, huh? Unless you happen to be standing underneath it. Ouch. You know, this reminds me of something that I read a few years back. What if I told you about a couple of planets where hydrocarbons are split and the carbon is squeezed under such intense pressure in the atmosphere that diamonds are formed and fall like rain?
You believe this story?
What if I told you that these planets were not in some far distant galaxy, but are right here in our own Milky Way?
Does this story seem possible?
And what if I told you that these planets were not only in the Milky Way, but right here in our own solar system? Does indeed rain diamonds. Back in 2017, it was announced that scientists had discovered such a process on both Uranus and Neptune, right here in our own backyard. Keep that in mind the next time that you're out jewelry shopping and you're paying top dollar for some of those diamonds. Those things literally fall out of the sky on other planets. Crazy, right?
Crazy.
You know, every day I learn something new about how our universe works, and I'm never disappointed. Each discovery reinforces to me just how wondrous the universe truly is and exactly how little we actually understand about its workings. Take this next article, for example. Scientists have recently put forth the theory that the early universe was full of black holes. That's right, it seems that as early as 900 million years after the Big Bang, there was already a black hole that was 1 billion times the size of our sun. That's friggin' huge. The data also suggests to scientists that the early universe had a large number of these massive black holes. Now, I think that's awesome because these supermassive black holes have been around for a very long time, and they really played a part in the formation of our universe and our galaxy. As the earliest solar systems were being formed, the largest of these black holes were capturing the solar systems and forming galaxies. And I think it's pretty dang cool to get a real understanding of how the universe was formed. And as it turns out, black holes had a critical role in the formation of our universe, and scientists have speculated that black holes will play a role in the end of our universe, possibly. I was watching a documentary about black holes recently, and they were saying that since there is a finite amount of matter in the universe, that ultimately black holes will consume all of this matter. At that point, the universe will be filled with black holes, and these things will bump around until they start to collide with each other and merge. This process will continue until only 2 black holes remain. Some scientists believe that this final black hole will slowly dissipate its energy as Hawking's radiation, or dark matter, dark energy, whatever you want to call it. At that point, the universe will cease to exist. But I gotta tell you guys, I got a problem with this theory, because the law of conservation of mass states that matter may not be created or destroyed. That means that whatever matter has been pulled into these black holes still exists there, even though it can never escape. So going back to the previous scenario where the final 2 black holes collided and merged all of the existing matter of the universe into one place at the same time, well, we don't have to speculate what happens then. We already know. When you have all the matter in the universe in the same place and time, you get yourself a Big Bang, and the universe starts all over again. Or is it a new universe that forms, a dark universe? I really don't know. This is all just my speculation, so I'm just telling you what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section below, and if you haven't gotten a chance, hit the subscribe button and ring that bell to support the channel.
All right, that was cool. I liked 503 stuff.
The image of the jester, or fool, wearing a 3-toed cap and performing for their king or queen is one of the most familiar icons of the Middle Ages.
A jester? A jester?
But who were the jesters, and what role did they play, and what were their lives actually like? The truth is that while jesters were important to medieval entertainment, their lives were far from just being fun and games. Today, we're going to take a look at what life was really like as a medieval jester. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History
This is Weird History Channel. They got some pretty cool stuff.
channel, and let us know in the comments below what overlooked historical figures you would like to hear about.
Play a little bit of them.
All right, let's see a tight 5 from these funny men.
How'd you do the queen? Well, from behind her, Grace.
Contrary to what we often see in movies and cartoons, a king's fool wasn't just some clownish oaf who got kicked around by the rest of the court. On the contrary, jestering was usually considered a respected profession, and jesters themselves were typically well-educated and highly intelligent. Also, that classic motley jester costume? Professional jesters didn't wear those. On most days, a jester wore the same kind of clothes any nobleman would wear to the king's court. So if professional jesters didn't wear the famous jester costume, who did? The answer is amateur fools.
What's black and white, black and white, black and white, black and white? The nun falling down the stairs.
These trying too hard to get the laugh amateurs would nearly always sport the classic getup, which consisted of a hood with multiple ears and a multicolored tunic. Various parts of the outfit, including the shoes, would usually have bells tied to them. Oh yeah, bells. Bells are funny. Since they didn't belong to any particular royal court, an amateur fool would travel around performing at fairs, in festivals, and on holidays. If none of those things were going on, you would likely find them performing for tips in the street. In modern times, we have the unequivocal right to make fun of our leaders, and rightfully so. But in medieval times, making fun of the king or queen was likely to get you executed.
What you just did is punishable by death.
Unless, of course, you were the court jester. Yep, this medieval double standard noted that the jester was the only person legally allowed to mock the king. Think of it as something akin to an official royal roast. Sir Geoffrey Ross, if you will. Many rulers even took great delight in being mocked by their jesters. Best of all, the jester's power to satirize didn't end with the king. A fool was typically given the power to openly mock any noble, whether the shortcomings he derided were real or made up. That, my friends, is called work in the room. No one likes to deliver bad news,
Bad news, milady. Rum is dead.
especially to a monarch who has the power to execute you. Nevertheless, someone had to give a spoonful of sugar to make the medicine go down. Jesters were there in order to keep the ruler appraised of things that weren't going too well. Yes, it was the fool's duty to deliver bad news. And as if that's not enough, they had to deliver it in a lighthearted manner. Delivering crucial information without provoking the ire of the master was a tricky business, and skilled fools were typically able to turn bad news into an amusing joke.
Your fiancé was only a third-rate sailor, but a first-rate second course.
Just don't open with the bad news. Jesters were well respected and important to their masters, but they were also entertainers. Like today, being an entertainer is hard enough, and for jesters, it could often be downright dangerous. They didn't have stuntmen. This was a one-man show. One aspect of jestering that could be highly dangerous was juggling. Juggling was a popular entertainment, but juggling with safe items like fruit got old fast, literally and figuratively. Audiences expected thrills and excitement, and so many jesters upped their game by juggling dangerous items like axes, daggers, and swords. Anything sharp was bound to be a hit, and the more dangerous the act was, the more audiences would applaud. Interestingly, juggling sharp objects wasn't just good for entertainment. It was also one of the means jesters would use on the battlefield to taunt enemies. I mean, what better way to show someone you're not worried about the threat they pose than to juggle axes while they look on? Sure, it's not for every audience. As skilled entertainers, court jesters were expected to be multi-talented. In medieval times, that meant being able to make music by farting. Yeah. Not exactly a material, but it was commonly sought talent, and being able to do it could pay off in big ways. For example, one jester famous for this ability was the 12th century English jester, Roland Le Farter, also known as Roland the Farter. People, we only wish we could make this up. Every year, Roland would perform on Christmas Day. Yes, Christmas Day, as if it couldn't get any weirder, and end his show with one jump, one whistle, and one fart. Serving under King Henry II, Roland's act was so beloved, he was awarded a manor in Suffolk and 30 acres.
Oh my
Yep, that's
God.
gold material right there.
That's hilarious.
Throwing a lavish party every single day might sound like fun, but most rulers didn't do it. This meant that jesters were really only performing occasionally, which raises the question of what did they do the rest of the time? The most famous jesters were able to relax, rehearse new material while looking at the mirror, but most typical jesters had other duties around the household to attend to when they weren't performing. Examples of such alternate duties included things like keeping the hounds and traveling to the market to buy livestock to feed the royal family and the rest of the household. Even back then, the hustle was real. The First Amendment guarantees all Americans freedom of speech, but in the Middle Ages, there was no such freedom, unless you were a court jester. Ordinary people could get themselves in big trouble by speaking wrongly of a king, lord, or nobleman. But jesters were not only allowed to make such criticisms, they were expected to. Because they had no real fear of reprisal, jesters were able to speak their mind and offer advice when others may have feared to give it. This meant the jester was often one of the only people a ruler could go to for an honest assessment of their actions and decisions. A jester was a trusted professional who served numerous roles, and both kings and queens alike have been known to develop close friendships with their personal court jesters. This meant that a jester often held a significant political position within their kingdom and would often even accompany their masters to war, kind of like a medieval Bob Hope. There is a well-known story about Jenny von Stockach, the court jester for the Duke of Austria. Jenny was present when the Duke assembled his war council to plan an attack on Switzerland. It is alleged that Jenny warned the Duke and his advisors, "You fools, you're all debating how to get into the country, but none of you have thought how you're going to get out again." The Duke ignored the warning and suffered massive losses on the battlefield. In this case, it would have been wise to listen to the fool. The fool had many duties, even on the battlefield, and one was to entertain. On the night before a battle, the jester would tell jokes, sing songs, recite stories, juggle, and dance. Like USO shows, the purpose was to take the soldiers' minds off the battle, letting them relax a little bit. The jester's other duty was to roast the enemy. Yes, telling jokes at the expense of those who would dare oppose the regent in battle was actually part of the jester's set when the kingdom was at war. Work the crowd of troops up a bit, which would hopefully raise their morale and spirits. A jester would often let such insults fly while riding in front of the troops, in order to be sure the enemy could hear. This taunting wasn't just for fun, though. It actually served a strategic purpose. The idea was for the jester to provoke those enemies who had explosive tempers into breaking ranks and charging prematurely.
Wow.
Entertaining the troops and slinging one-liners at the enemy was only a part of the jester's job on the battlefield. They also served as messengers to the opposing army. If the king or queen needed to send demands to the enemy, the jester was the only person trusted enough to do it right. Some of these demands might include the conditions for the release of hostages or the terms of surrender. And if you're thinking that strolling into enemy territory and firing off demands sounds dangerous, you're right. Jesters were known to be important and were supposed to never be harmed, but it didn't always go that way. Angry enemies would often kill the messenger when they didn't like the message. Captured fools might be beheaded.
Just clean up my neck a little. Leave the top float.
Or launched back to their own lines by way of catapult. A jester flying through the air.
marking a point in history where the original, hey, doesn't flying suck joke started. So you're probably wondering, where could a king go to find a man who could give military advice as well as he could juggle knives? The truth is, jesters didn't come from any single place. They came from a range of backgrounds, from university dropouts to excommunicated monks. Oh yeah, those monk jokes, really good stuff. Although more educated candidates, like monks, were generally preferred, some rulers actually promoted from within. They selected their fools from existing serf servants, who themselves could be both intelligent and witty. Professional fools might have been well-respected professionals with keen intellects and great political power, but not all jesters were so fortunate. Sadly, some fools...
See, jesters remind me of some people in chat rooms. Like, some people are just so witty and clever and funny, and they know how to mock the best.
People with physical deformities or mental illnesses that were detrimental to finding other employment. Known as innocent fools, such jesters would often be kept by wealthy and noble families in a degrading manner, similar to how one might keep a pet. They would work for no pay and be provided only with food, clothes, and a place to sleep on the floor. Like any other well-respected professional, medieval court jesters were typically paid very well for their services. Many became quite wealthy and might even enjoy a permanent place of residence in their master's castle. In other instances, some jesters were given large tracts of land with extravagant homes. However, that was just the successful ones. At the other end of the spectrum were the less fortunate jesters who had to travel from place to place. They often had no permanent home and lived in poverty. So what's your best joke? Can you make the king laugh? Let us know in the comments below and watch.
Whoops. That was cool. I was kind of bored this morning, so I jumped on live. I do got to run to the store. I got to get some maple syrup and spaghetti. I'll come back on later tonight. I'll come back on at like 7, maybe 8. I don't know. Unless somebody's on like Manny. But I'm going to end this stream and I'll see you guys later. I'm going to go get some food. Thank you for hanging out. I'll see you guys.